Hello, story lovers. Tonight, we're diving into a tale of passion, secrets, and choices that could change everything. Hearts will be broken, love will be tested, and every twist will leave you on the edge of your seat. Comment below where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, hit like, subscribe. Share it with someone who loves a powerful love story. And tap the bell so you never miss the next thrilling chapter. Ready? Let's begin. Asterisk, the cream envelope felt like a mistake against Melody Rivers' paint-stained fingers. Gold embossing caught the dim light of her Brooklyn apartment, spelling out words that didn't belong in her world. Sterling Foundation, annual charity auction. The address label read M. Rivers. But she knew this invitation was meant for Maxwell Rivers, the celebrated artist whose penthouse across town might as well have been on another planet. Melody turned the heavy paper over, inhaling its expensive scent. Her studio apartment smelled of turpentine and instant coffee. Canvas paintings lined every wall, depicting the raw beauty she found in everyday city life. Fire escapes catching morning light. Tired faces on subway platforms, wildflowers growing through concrete cracks. She should return the invitation. The rational part of her mind whispered this truth while her heart hammered against her ribs. But as she read about an exclusive auction featuring emerging artists, something reckless stirred within her chest. "This is where careers are made," she whispered to her reflection in the blackened window. Her wardrobe consisted of paint-splattered jeans and one black dress from 3 years of failed job interviews. She spent her last $50 on cheap perfume and subway fare, telling herself this was an investment in dreams she'd never dared voice aloud. The Sterling Foundation building rose like a glass cathedral into the Manhattan sky. Elegant women in designer gowns stepped from limousines while men in tailored suits discussed million-dollar deals. Melody's stomach churned, but she forced herself forward. The doorman's professional smile never faltered as he glanced at her invitation and waved her through golden revolving doors. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast warm light over pristine white walls displaying paintings and sculptures. Servers in crisp uniforms moved through the crowd carrying champagne and delicate appetizers. Melody accepted sparkling water, not trusting herself with alcohol when her nerves already felt frayed. Despite her anxiety, the artwork drew her in. She moved from piece to piece, studying each creation with the trained eye of someone who understood the technical skill and emotional depth required. To create meaningful art, she forgot about elegant crowds and simple dresses. Lost in the pure joy of experiencing beautiful creations, a particularly striking abstract painting captured her attention. Bold strokes of blue and gray with tiny touches of gold suggested hope hiding in unexpected places, while somehow managing to capture the feeling of loneliness in a crowded city. "You have excellent taste," a deep voice said beside her. "That's one of my favorite pieces in tonight's collection." Melody turned to find herself face to face with the most striking man she had ever seen. Tall, with professionally styled dark hair that somehow remained approachable. He wore an expensive suit with casual confidence rather than stiffness. What struck her most were his warm brown eyes, genuinely interested in her response. "The artist understands that beauty and sadness often exist in the same space," she replied. Then immediately worried she sounded pretentious. "I mean, it just speaks to me. Jackson Sterling." He extended his hand with a smile that transformed his entire face. "And I don't think you sound pretentious at all. I think you understand art in a way that many of tonight's guests don't." Melody's heart stopped. Jackson Sterling was the founder of the Sterling Foundation, one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in the country, and according to business magazines, one of the most eligible bachelors in New York. She was shaking hands with a man whose company was worth billions. "Melody Rivers," she managed, proud that her voice remained steady. Jackson's eyes lit up with recognition. "Rivers, I've been hoping to meet you. Victoria mentioned you might be here tonight." He gestured toward a sophisticated woman in a silver gown, directing the evening's activities with military precision. "Your reputation as an emerging artist is really quite impressive." Melody's stomach dropped. He thought she was Maxwell Rivers, or at least someone important enough to be invited to this exclusive gathering. She opened her mouth to correct him, but he continued speaking with infectious enthusiasm. I've been following the contemporary art scene closely. Too much of what I see these days feels sterile, created for investment rather than impact. I believe art should make people feel something, even if that feeling is uncomfortable. Something in Jackson's tone was so genuine, so different from what she'd expected from a billionaire CEO, that she found herself relaxing slightly. Especially if it's uncomfortable, she agreed. As they talked, Melody forgot about mistaken identities and elegant crowds. She described painting in her tiny apartment, finding beauty in morning light, hitting fire escapes, in the expressions of tired commuters, in flowers growing through sidewalk cracks. Jackson listened with complete attention, sharing his own thoughts about creativity and social impact. He told her about growing up in foster care, about using technology to solve problems he'd experienced firsthand, about his belief that success meant nothing without purpose. I've learned that money can't buy the things that really matter, he said. Genuine connection, meaningful work, the ability to create something that outlasts you, those are the real treasures. When the auction began, Jackson insisted Melody sit with him at a front table. She protested quietly that she didn't belong there, but he dismissed her concerns with a warm smile. You belong wherever your passion and talent take you. As the evening progressed, Melody watched in amazement as paintings sold for amounts representing more than she earned in a year. Jackson bid on several pieces, choosing works by unknown artists rather than established names. I prefer to invest in potential rather than proven success, he explained. There's something exciting about being the first person to recognize someone's genius. When a painting similar in style to Melody's own work came up for auction, Jackson bid aggressively, ultimately winning it for an impressive sum. I have a feeling this artist is going somewhere special, he said. And Melody felt hope flutter in her chest like a caged bird, desperate for flight. As the auction wound down, Jackson turned to her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Melody, I'd like to see more of your work. Would you consider having dinner with me tomorrow night? I have a proposition that might change everything for you. But before she could answer, a woman's sharp voice cut through the elegant chatter like a blade through silk. Jackson, darling, I see you've met our little imposter. Victoria's silver gown shimmered as she approached, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Every head in their vicinity turned, sensing drama about to unfold like predators catching the scent of blood. Imposter? Jackson's voice carried a dangerous edge that made Melody's skin prickle. Oh, this is delicious. Victoria's laugh tinkled like breaking crystal. Jackson, meet Melody Rivers, struggling artist from Brooklyn. Not Maxwell Rivers. It's a renowned contemporary artist you've been expecting all evening. The color drained from Jackson's face. Around them, conversations quieted as the elegant crowd sensed scandal brewing. Melody felt exposed under the crystal chandeliers, every flaw highlighted, every lie laid bare. Is this true? Jackson's brown eyes, which had been so warm moments before, now burned with something colder. Melody's throat felt like sandpaper. I can explain. Can you? His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than shouting. Because right now it looks like you've been playing me for a fool all evening. No, Jackson, please. She reached for his arm, but he stepped back as if her touch burned. The invitation came to my mailbox by mistake. I just wanted to see what this world was like. I never meant to deceive you, never meant to. Victoria's voice dripped with false sympathy. Oh, honey, you sat at his table, let him buy you dinner. Accepted his attention for hours while knowing exactly who he thought you were. Jackson's jaw clenched. I told you about my childhood, about growing up in foster care, about things I don't share with anyone. The pain in his voice cut deeper than any accusation. Melody realized that in revealing his vulnerabilities to someone he thought was his equal, Jackson had exposed himself in a way that now felt like betrayal. I shared those things because I thought you were someone who would understand, he continued. Someone who had achieved something, who had earned the right to be here. I am someone who understands. Melody's voice broke. Everything I told you about my art, about finding beauty in everyday life, about believing art should make people feel something uncomfortable, that was all real. The only thing that wasn't real was my invitation to be here. The only thing? Jackson laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You've been lying since the moment we shook hands. Because I knew you'd never look at me twice if you knew the truth. That I'm nobody. That I live in a studio apartment barely bigger than your walk-in closet. That I spent my last $50 just to be here tonight." Victoria clapped her hands slowly, mockingly. How romantic. The poor little artist crashes high society and tricks the billionaire into caring about her. It's like a fairy tale. Stop it. Jackson's voice cut through Victoria's sarcasm. For a moment, Melody thought he was defending her. Then she saw his face. "This isn't a game, Victoria. And you," he turned to Melody, "you have no idea what you've done." The crowd pressed closer, smartphones emerging like vultures. Melody could see tomorrow's headlines forming: "Billionaire CEO fooled by art world imposter, Jackson." I'm sorry. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I know I should have told you the truth." "Should have told me the truth?" His voice rose now, drawing more attention. "You should never have been here in the first place. This event raises millions for children's charities. It's not a playground for people looking to social climb." Each word hit like a physical blow. Melody felt her dreams crumbling around her like a house of cards in a hurricane. "You're right," she whispered. "I don't belong here." She turned to leave, but Jackson caught her wrist. His touch burned through her skin, and when she looked back, she saw something complicated flickering in his eyes. Anger, yes, but something else too. Something that looked almost like regret. Melody, wait, but Victoria stepped between them, her smile triumphant. "Oh no, Jackson. Let her go. Some people need to learn their place." The words hung in the air like poison. Around them, the crowd murmured with satisfaction, their evening's entertainment provided. Melody pulled free from Jackson's grip and walked toward the exit. Her spine straight, despite feeling like she was shattering from the inside out. She was almost to the door when she heard Jackson's voice one more time. "Victoria, schedule a meeting with Maxwell Rivers for tomorrow. It seems we have some actual business to discuss." The dismissal was complete. Melody pushed through the golden revolving doors and stumbled onto the sidewalk, the cold night air hitting her like a slap. She had been erased as if she had never existed. But as she walked toward the subway, she didn't see Jackson watching her from the window, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, his expression unreadable. 3 days later, Melody was mixing paint in her tiny apartment when someone knocked on her door. She opened it to find a courier holding an envelope that made her heart skip. Sterling Foundation letterhead. Inside was a single sheet of paper with Jackson's signature and a check that made her knees weak. But it was the handwritten note at the bottom that made her hand shake. "Your painting sold at auction for $50,000. The buyer wishes to remain anonymous. Consider this a commission for your next piece. We need to talk. Meet me at the address below tomorrow at 8 p.m. Come alone." The address was 4, private gallery in Soho she'd never heard of. Melody stared at the note until the words blurred together. Jackson Sterling wanted to see her again, but she couldn't tell if it was for business or revenge. The Soho gallery stood between a vintage boutique and an overpriced coffee shop, its darkened windows revealing nothing. Melody stood on the sidewalk at exactly 8 p.m., clutching the note that had turned her world upside down for the second time in a week. The door opened before she could knock. "You came." Jackson's voice was unreadable in the shadows. He looked different somehow, less polished than at the auction. His white shirt was rolled up at the sleeves, his dark hair slightly disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it. "You sent me a $50,000 check. I figured you deserved an explanation for why I can't accept it." "Can't accept it?" He stepped aside to let her enter. "Why not?" The gallery was smaller than she'd expected. Intimate and dimly lit, but what took her breath away were the paintings covering every wall. Her paintings. Canvases she'd never seen before, depicting scenes she'd never painted, but somehow, unmistakably, her style. "What is this?" Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "The real Maxwell Rivers' latest collection. Turns out he's been buying pieces from struggling artists for years, signing his name to them and selling them for massive profits." Jackson's voice carried a bitter edge. Your style is remarkably similar to his, because several of these are actually yours. Pieces you sold to galleries for a few $100s that he bought and claimed as his own work. Melody moved closer to the paintings, recognizing her brushstrokes, her color choices. Her soul poured onto canvas and signed with another man's name. I don't understand. Maxwell Rivers isn't just a successful artist. He's a fraud. And when I started investigating after our encounter at the auction, I discovered something else. Jackson moved to stand behind her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. He's been selling forgeries to my foundation for years. Millions of dollars in fake art for our charity auctions. She turned to face him, her heart pounding. That's why you wanted to meet with him. I wanted to destroy him. The words came out like a confession. But then I realized something. You're the real artist. You're the one whose work has been raising money for children's charities, without you ever knowing it. The air between them crackled with tension. In the dim light, Jackson's eyes looked almost black, burning with an intensity that made her skin flush. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because I have a proposition. He moved closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne mixed with something darker, more dangerous. Help me take him down. Testify about what he's done to you and other artists. In exchange, I'll make sure you get everything you deserve. Gallery representation, exhibitions, your name on your own work. And if I say no? His smile was sharp as a blade. Maxwell Rivers continues to profit from your art while you struggle to pay rent in Brooklyn. Your choice. Melody felt trapped between desire and fear. Jackson Sterling was offering her everything she'd ever wanted. But the way he looked at her now made her wonder if she was making a deal with the devil. There's something else, he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous whisper she remembered from the auction. I can't stop thinking about you. The confession hung between them like a live wire. Melody's breath caught in her throat. Jackson, I know I have no right. I know you lied to me, and I humiliated you in front of everyone. But that night at the auction, when you talked about your art, about finding beauty in broken things, he reached up to touch her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. I saw something real for the first time in years. She should step away. Should tell him this was a terrible idea. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch. What are you asking me? I'm asking you to trust me. To let me make this right. His lips brushed hers, soft at first, then with growing urgency. She tasted expensive whiskey and something darker, more desperate. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Okay, she whispered against his mouth. I'll help you. The smile that spread across Jackson's face was triumphant and predatory. Good. We start tomorrow night. There's a private showing of Maxwell's work at the Morrison Gallery. High-profile collectors, art critics, journalists, the perfect audience for his downfall. What do you need me to do? Just be yourself. Tell the truth about your art. Let them see what a real artist looks like. His hand moved to the back of her neck, fingers tangling in her hair. And stay close to me. This could get dangerous. The warning should have scared her. Instead, it sent a thrill through her body like electricity. As Jackson walked her to the door, he pressed a key into her hand. This gallery is yours now. A place to work, to create, to prepare for what's coming. Melody looked down at the key, then back at Jackson's face. In the dim light, his expression was unreadable. But something in his eyes made her stomach flutter with both anticipation and dread. Jackson, what aren't you telling me? His kiss was his only answer, fierce and possessive, and full of promises she wasn't sure she wanted him to keep. When he pulled away, his voice was barely a whisper. Tomorrow night, everything changes. Are you ready? Before she could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stay away from Jackson Sterling if you know what's good for you. He's not who you think he is. A friend Melody's blood turned to ice, but when she looked up, Jackson was already disappearing into the shadows between buildings, leaving her alone with more questions than answers and a key that felt like it might unlock more than just a gallery door. The Morrison Gallery hummed with New York's art elite, their voices creating a sophisticated symphony of power and influence. Melody stood at Jackson's side, wearing a midnight blue dress he'd had delivered to her apartment that morning. The fabric felt like liquid silk against her skin, but she couldn't shake the memory of that anonymous text message. "He's not who you think he is." "You look stunning," Jackson murmured against her ear, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. "Ready to watch Maxwell Rivers burn?" Across the room, Maxwell Rivers held court near his latest masterpiece, a painting Melody recognized as her own work from 2 years ago. The piece she'd titled Urban Solitude now bore his signature and a price tag of $200,000. "He's not even trying to hide it anymore," she whispered. "Arrogance makes people careless." Jackson's smile was predatory. "And careless people make mistakes." Victoria appeared beside them like a wraith in designer black, her smile sharp enough to cut diamonds. "Jackson, darling, you do love your projects." Her eyes raked over Melody with undisguised contempt. "Though I have to admire your commitment to this. It's a particular charity case. Careful." "Victoria," Jackson's voice carried a warning. Jealousy isn't a good look on you. But something in Victoria's expression made Melody's skin crawl. There was triumph there, as if she knew a secret that would destroy everything. "Ladies and gentlemen," Maxwell Rivers called out, tapping his champagne glass with a silver spoon. "Thank you for joining me tonight to celebrate art, passion, and the human spirit captured on canvas." Jackson squeezed Melody's hand. "This is it. When he finishes his speech, you're going to tell everyone the truth about those paintings." But as Maxwell continued speaking, Melody noticed something odd. Victoria was watching Jackson, not Maxwell, her expression growing more satisfied by the minute. And in the crowd, she spotted several men in expensive suits who didn't look like art collectors. They looked like security, or worse. "Jackson," she whispered urgently, "something's wrong." "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, Maxwell's voice cut through the gallery like a blade. "But before we discuss my latest work, I'd like to address something that's come to my attention. It seems we have an imposter among us tonight." The crowd turned as one, searching for the source of scandal. Melody's blood turned to ice when Maxwell's eyes locked onto hers. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Melody Rivers, a struggling artist from Brooklyn who has been spreading vicious lies about me and my work. She claims, falsely, that some of my pieces are actually hers." The gallery erupted in murmurs of shock and disgust. But what made Melody's world shatter wasn't Maxwell's accusation. It was the fact that Jackson stepped away from her, his hand dropping from her back as if she'd suddenly become poisonous. "Jackson." She turned to face him, searching his eyes for some sign that he was as surprised as she was. What she found there made her knees weak. Guilt. Cold, calculated guilt. "I'm sorry, Melody," he said quietly, but not quietly enough that the nearby guests couldn't hear. "But I can't be associated with someone making false accusations against respected artists." The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. Around them, phones emerged like predators sensing blood, cameras focusing on her stricken face. "You planned this," she whispered, the pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. "The gallery, the dress, bringing me here. You planned all of it." Jackson's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Victoria moved to his side, sliding her arm through his with possessive satisfaction. "Did you really think Jackson Sterling would risk his reputation for a nobody from Brooklyn?" Victoria's laugh was like breaking glass. He needed someone to discredit Maxwell quietly, but when that became complicated, he needed a scapegoat. "Congratulations, darling. You're it." The crowd pressed closer, feeding on the drama. Melody felt like she was drowning in a sea of hostile faces, all of them convinced she was nothing more than a con artist trying to destroy a respected member of their community. "The paintings," she gasped, looking at Jackson. "The gallery you showed me, those were real, very real." Maxwell Rivers stepped forward, his smile triumphant. "And all legally purchased from various artists over the years. I keep extensive documentation of every transaction, but you signed your name to them." "I transformed them," Maxwell corrected smoothly. "Added my own touches, my own vision." "It's a perfectly legal form of artistic collaboration." Melody realized with growing horror that she'd been played by everyone. Maxwell wasn't a fraud. He was just an opportunist who exploited struggling artists within the bounds of the law. And Jackson hadn't been trying to expose him. Jackson had been trying to eliminate competition. "You bought those paintings yourself," she said to Jackson, her voice growing stronger with rage. "You're planning to open your own gallery. You needed Maxwell out of the way." The flash of surprise in Jackson's eyes told her she'd guessed correctly. "You used me to try to destroy him, and when that didn't work, you decided to destroy me instead, Melody. You don't understand the complexities of I understand perfectly." She stood straighter, channeling every ounce of dignity she had left. "I understand that you're both predators who feed on artists like me. The only difference is that Maxwell is honest about it." Security moved closer, and Melody realized they weren't there to protect the guests from her. They were there to remove her quietly, to make this entire scene disappear. But she wasn't going quietly. "You want to know the truth about my art?" She called out to the crowd. "Jackson Sterling has been buying pieces from struggling artists for months, planning to open his own gallery with stolen work. Maxwell Rivers may exploit artists, but at least he pays us. Jackson just takes." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. She saw doubt creep into several faces in the crowd, saw phones turning toward Jackson instead of her. Jackson's mask finally slipped, revealing something cold and dangerous underneath. "Security, please escort Ms. Rivers out. She's clearly having some kind of breakdown." As hands reached for her arms, Melody looked directly into Jackson's eyes. "I trusted you with everything. My art, my dreams, my heart. How could you do this to me?" For just a moment, she saw something flicker across his face. Regret, maybe? Or just annoyance that his plan had become messier than anticipated. "Because I could," he said simply, and those 3 words destroyed whatever was left of her heart. The security guards were gentle but firm as they escorted her toward the exit. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, everyone eager to distance themselves from the scandal. But as they reached the door, Melody heard Victoria's voice cut through the chatter. "Oh, and Jackson, your little artist friend isn't the only one with secrets. I think it's time everyone learned about your other projects. Starting with the children's charity that's been funneling money into your private accounts." The gallery fell silent. Jackson's face went white as bone, and Melody realized that the game was far from over. The security guard's grip loosened as Victoria's words echoed through the gallery. Every phone in the room was now recording. Every face turned toward Jackson Sterling as his carefully constructed empire began to crumble in real time. "Victoria, what the hell are you doing?" Jackson's voice cracked like thin ice under pressure. "What I should have done years ago." Victoria's smile was razor-sharp and absolutely merciless. "Ladies and gentlemen, meet the real Jackson Sterling. Not the charitable tech mogul, but a man who's been embezzling from his own foundation for 3 years. The gallery erupted in chaos. Reporters who had come for an art story suddenly found themselves covering the scandal of the decade. Maxwell Rivers stepped backward into the shadows, smart enough to distance himself from the explosion. Melody should have felt vindicated. Should have walked away and let Jackson burn for what he'd done to her. Instead, she found herself stepping forward. "Let me go," she told the security guards. They looked to Jackson for confirmation, but he was too busy watching his world collapse to give orders. Melody walked back into the center of the gallery, her silk dress rustling like whispered secrets. "You want the truth?" She called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Here's the truth." The room fell silent again, everyone hungry for more revelations. "Jackson Sterling is a liar and a thief. He used me, manipulated me, and threw me away when it became convenient." Her eyes found his across the room, seeing the raw desperation there. "But the Sterling Foundation has saved thousands of children's lives over the past 5 years. Whatever money Jackson stole, the good the foundation does is real." Jackson stared at her as if she'd lost her mind. Victoria's expression shifted from triumph to confusion. "The children who've received medical care, education, shelter through that foundation don't care about Jackson Sterling's personal corruption. They care about staying alive." Melody's voice grew stronger, more certain. "So before you destroy everything, Ask yourself who really gets hurt when the foundation collapses. She pulled out her phone and held it up. I've been recording our conversation, Victoria. Your confession about embezzlement, your admission that you've known about it for years and done nothing to stop it or help those children. Victoria's face went pale. You little bitch, the way I see it. We all have choices to make. Melody looked around the room at the faces of New York's most powerful people. We can tear each other apart and let innocent children suffer for our mistakes. Or we can find another way. Jackson stepped forward, his eyes locked on hers. Melody, what are you doing? Something stupid, probably. She managed a broken smile. Jackson Sterling will resign from the Sterling Foundation, effective immediately. All stolen funds will be returned with interest. Victoria will resign as well and submit to a full financial audit. And if we refuse? Victoria's voice was pure venom. Melody held up her phone again. Then I release this recording to every news outlet in the city, and all of you go down together. The foundation collapses, the children suffer, and everyone loses. The gallery was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. But if you agree to my terms, this recording disappears forever. The foundation continues under new management, the children keep getting help, and everyone gets a chance to start over. Jackson moved closer, his eyes searching her face. Why would you do this? After everything I've done to you? Melody looked at him for a long moment, remembering the man she'd thought she was falling in love with. The one who'd shared his childhood pain, who'd spoken about art and meaning and connection. That man might have been a lie, but the pain in his eyes right now was absolutely real. Because those children deserve better than our drama, she said simply. And because I'm tired of being a victim, Victoria laughed bitterly. So what? We just walk away. Pretend none of this happened? You walk away rich and free instead of in handcuffs, Melody replied. Seems like a decent trade. Jackson stepped close enough to touch her, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. I never meant for it to go this far? Yes, you did. But there was no anger left in her voice, only exhaustion. You just didn't expect to feel guilty about it. He reached up to touch her face. The same gesture from that night in the gallery that felt like a lifetime ago. I could have loved you. In another life? Under different circumstances, but not in this one. No, not in this one. Victoria cleared her throat impatiently. Are we doing this or not? Because I'd rather not spend my evening in a holding cell. Jackson stepped back, his businessman's mask sliding into place one final time. Fine, we'll do it your way, Melody. Victoria and I will resign. The money will be returned. The crowd began to disperse, sensing the show was over. Phones disappeared as people realized there would be no more scandalous revelations. Maxwell Rivers nodded approvingly at Melody before disappearing into the night, probably already planning how to spin this story to his advantage. As the gallery emptied, Jackson lingered near the door. What will you do now? Melody looked at the paintings on the walls, and Maxwell's signature covering her brushstrokes, at the world that had chewed her up and spit her out. Paint, she said finally. Create something real. The gallery in Soho is still yours. I signed the papers before tonight. She pulled the key from her purse and held it out to him. I don't want anything from you. Jackson stared at the key, but didn't take it. Then keep it. Not as a gift from me, but as something you earned. You saved more lives tonight than I ever did. You did it by choosing to be better than all of us. He walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, the way I felt about you at the auction, before I knew who you really were, that was real. I know, she said softly. That's what makes it so sad. After he was gone, Melody stood alone in the gallery surrounded by stolen art and broken dreams. She looked down at the key in her palm, warm from her grip, and made a decision. 2 months later, the Melody Rivers Gallery opened in Soho with an exhibition called Fractured Things. The paintings depicted broken windows catching sunlight, cracked sidewalks, growing wildflowers, and damaged hearts learning to beat again. Jackson Sterling was there for the opening, standing in the back of the crowd wearing a simple black suit instead of his usual designer armor. Their eyes met across the room, and he raised his glass in a silent toast before disappearing into the New York night. Melody never saw him again, but every month, an anonymous donation arrived at the Sterling Foundation with a note that simply read, "For the children." She kept painting. She kept growing. She kept choosing to be better than the world that had tried to break her. And in the end, that was enough. The end.